Given where you're at relative to your goal, we're looking to go from the 147 to the 175. If you wait till mid-April, then you're gonna lose a potential month of the more effective studying. This is Jake, and he's looking to go from a 147 to a 175 in the next 3 months. My name is Steve Schwartz, and I've been teaching the LSAT for the past 20 years. Today, Jake is going to bring me his biggest LSAT challenges, and I'll help him address them. Tell me a little bit about where you're scoring right now, and then what's your ultimate goal?
So I took a diagnostic, and I got a 147. When I'm doing untimed sections, I'm averaging about 20 out of 25 to 20 out of 26 on the untimed portions. I haven't gotten into RC yet according to my study plan, but so I feel like I've definitely made some progress. I think that a 147 is usually, getting more like 13 to 14 out of the 26. I'm getting faster and more accurate as time goes on.
You're at 147 now in your most recent test. You're looking to get up to a 175, right?
Yes.
When's your target test date? How much time do you have?
The idea is June. That being said, if it gets to be the middle of May, my test scores are averaging 160s. I probably will just opt for the reschedule to August.
So you're aiming to take it 3 months from now, getting roughly a 25, 30 point increase ballpark. And if you need to, you'll push it back to August, about 5 months away. What sort of constraints do you have in your life and your schedule outside of the LSAT that might limit your ability to study?
So I'm a busy guy for sure. I work full time. I'm still a student. I'm taking quite a few credits as well. The good news is I do have time during office hours that I can dedicate to studying the LSAT. So I usually get about 2 to 3 hours at work, and then I usually get an hour or two at home. So I'd say I probably average about 4 hours a day.
Despite these other obligations is awesome. It makes it that much more likely that he'll get the 25, 30 point increase that he is looking for. Of course, you've also got to make sure that you're using those 4 hours effectively and you're not studying when you're fatigued after a long day. So the fact that Jake can use his office hours time to study for the LSAT is fantastic. And even just an hour or two here or there over the course of the day adds up over time. And if you have a structured study plan, a plan of attack regarding what to do, when you're able to sit down and actually put in the time, it'll let you get to work that much faster. Now, you mentioned logical reasoning, so have you not touched reading comp at all yet?
I've obviously done the one on the practice test that I took, and I've done a few sections on the live sessions through Unplugged, and then that might be the only individual one I've done outside of that practice test.
How do you expect reading comp will go relative to logical reasoning?
So after I spoke with Jet yesterday, he's my tutor, I kind of have a more streamlined idea of how I want to attack just the stimulus in general. And even just after taking his advice that he gave me yesterday, I found that I was more efficient when I took practiced LR sections. So I think that my reading, just really focusing on pausing after each sentence and really trying to soak up the information, I think it'll go similarly to my production with LR, as long as my production continues to get better with that.
That does. And you mentioned that untimed you're doing quite well, or reasonably well. Like you mentioned with LR, you're getting 20 out of 25 or so, right?
The ones that I'm missing are usually all on the back end. Not always, but most of the time. Usually 3 to 4 out of those 5 or 6 that I'm missing are in the last 5 questions. Just if I can kind of get dialed in the more convoluted stimulus through the back end of the exam, I think that I'll start to see some big jumps there.
So it sounds like most of the ones you're getting are just the harder ones in the section, but when you add in timing as a component, then the accuracy drops quite a bit. So there's some work to be done on pacing as well as the accuracy. Jake has to work on both accuracy and pacing, and neither of these happen in isolation. Accuracy comes from working on the foundation in the proper areas, which is going to be why it's key for Jake to track his progress and note trends in what he's getting wrong and why. Getting faster, improving pacing comes in part from getting a better understanding, developing that muscle memory. So when you see a new question, you are automatically, perhaps even subconsciously, relating it back to similar questions of that type that you've seen in the past. Okay, and how often are you meeting with Jet?
I met with him for the first time yesterday. I haven't scheduled the next one yet. I'm trying to decide because I have about 17 more sessions left. I'm trying to weigh out whether I want hold off for a second and then stack them kind of as I'm like ramping up, getting closer until the actual test dates, if that makes sense. Like I've considered waiting a little bit so that I can do maybe 2 a week starting in mid-April or something like that.
You have your study plan, right? The day-by-day personalized plan. Have you been following that plan? Is it serving your needs right now, do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. What I've done is practical application where it requests that you do drilling and the untimed sections. That I've been super diligent with. And then the portions that are like the platform itself, I still go through them for the sake of having more dedicated time to like actually doing problems. I usually streamline it a little bit. So I'll kind of bounce around the video to see which portions I find most useful to me. But yeah, the study plan in and of itself is effective for sure.
Talk to me about how you're reviewing your mistakes.
I'll go to each wrong answer that I've submitted, look at my answer choice, and then just really like dive deep because I mean, obviously it's the wrong one. So I'll look at the specific verbiage that they're using, go back to the stimulus, and just like pinpoint exactly where like I went wrong. Like a good example was there was a question that I did today that it was talking about the incident of people being confused by news broadcasting. And then the middle of the stimulus said, studies have shown that the amount of information sent out in a news broadcast at one time is not more than would be considered reasonable. And that specific portion where it says at one time was kind of where I tripped. Yeah, usually I'll just try and find exactly what it is that was wrong and then try and figure out why the right answer is right. That's not really like anything groundbreaking, but...
You know, I think that the at one time, I mean, the devil's in the details, right? So those particular phrases can make all the difference.
When I'm reviewing, usually what I'm finding, it's a simple piece of the passage or the stimulus that it's a detail that I either made an assumption about or that I just passed over and didn't give enough attention to. A lot of times it's quantifiable words or strong language. Strong language I'm pretty good with now. The quantifiable words are ones that I've kind of had to work on, but... yeah.
As you engage in a more in-depth review process, the insights around the mistakes you're making and why, like missing key details or key phrases that make all the difference, it's going to help a lot. So I want to look at specifically what you're currently doing with your review process, just to see if maybe there's a way we can help you level it up. Hey guys, real quick, if you're just getting started with your LSAT prep or you're looking for a quick refresher, you can take and apply to your LSAT prep for a quick score boost, and again, it's 100% free. Grab your copy below, and now back to the show. So I've pulled up here the document that you sent me. I'm seeing here, this is from Prep Test 104, Section 1, a handful of different questions there. Is this pretty typical or representative of what your review process looks like?
I would say so. Yeah, that was probably a more detailed one that I had done yesterday, because I hadn't found a question. So, and as you can see, the 21, 23, and 24, I didn't fill anything out because those were the only ones that I couldn't figure out exactly why the right answer was right and why the wrong answer was wrong. And so I went to Jet with those. But yeah, I would say that the general application is typical of how I would normally do it.
Okay, so I see you're noting here, just for example, maybe the first one you listed is a bit more detailed than usual, but then question 7, a sentence for choice A, a sentence for choice C, the wrong and the right. Same goes for 15. I'm noting here for 15 you wrote A is correct and B is wrong because et cetera, et cetera. All right, so we'll dive more into that. Tell me about, with logical reasoning, I know you haven't spent much time on reading comp yet, but for logical reasoning, are you noticing trends in particular question types that you have more trouble with than others?
I don't think so. I probably need to do a better job of of tracking that specific aspect of things. I feel like it's a pretty healthy mix for the most part. I feel like parallel reasoning ones, which is from what I've seen common, is that they take me longer, but in terms of like a specific difficulty with a question type, not that I've observed as of yet. So
there might be room there to track more, to notice if there are particular trends. Now, what about pacing? Have you been doing any timed sections yet?
Yes.
Okay, and when you're doing timed sections, how do you find that your time allocation is going over the course of the section? Are you running out of time? Are you finishing too early?
Run out of time. Yeah, I would say like the best that I've done as late on a time section was I got 16, and that was without me guessing on any of the final questions. So I mean that isn't totally representative. And the ones that I had attempted, I got two wrong. So I had done 18 total.
How often are you taking practice tests overall?
So I took my diagnostic, I took that like 3 weeks ago, but study plan hasn't told me to do a practice test until this coming Saturday.
All right, that sounds good. I think that there's still more foundational work to do before getting into lots of timed exams on a regular basis. So I think I've got a pretty good overall sense of the picture of your plan. Thanks for staying with me as I get through these questions here. A couple of thoughts. When you're doing these timed sections, you're seeing roughly a 6 raw score drop from maybe 20 correct untimed down to 14 timed, right? So
correct.
Timing is a big factor here. 6 questions out of 25 is roughly a quarter of the whole section. So there's a lot of work to be done with pacing. At the same time, if we want to get you to a 175, we also need to raise your accuracy even when you're untimed. It'll be helpful if you start tracking your results by question type, which you mentioned earlier might be useful as well. So if we have more data, we'll get a better picture of whether there are trends in the question types you're getting wrong. So you see this is all tied together here. If we have the data on what you're getting wrong, and we notice, for example, that you're getting flaw questions wrong a lot, that would indicate maybe you want to drill flaw questions on the side, since that's a high yield area. There's a lot of those on the exam.
Right.
But the idea being that if you track your results, what you're getting wrong, what you're having difficulty with, in addition to reviewing in more detail, then you'll be able to see these are the areas I need to spend more time on, which will raise your accuracy. To work on your pacing, you're going to want to look at where can you speed up, where do you need to slow down. So speeding up, for anyone aiming for a 165 or above, I would typically recommend aiming to solve the first 10 questions in roughly 10 to 12 minutes, building up a time bank, then apply to the tougher questions later in the section that truly need it. The questions get tougher as the section goes on, meaning those first 10 questions, those are the easier ones, those are your gimmies. You don't want to second guess yourself on those. Get through them as fast as possible, lock up those points so that you have more time for the tougher questions later in the section that truly need it. You want to solve the first 10 in roughly 10-12 minutes, meaning about a minute per question, so that you can devote maybe 2.5-3 minutes on those harder questions later in the section. You want to have more time to solve those than average, not less. And so the 3 phases of prep: accuracy, pacing, endurance. Pacing falls right there in the middle, and it's your stepping stone to doing full-length timed exams where you stitch together 4 individual sections, each with on-point pacing, and then you're working on your endurance so that you don't get fatigued by section 4.
Yeah, right.
So faster on the easier ones to slow down on the harder ones. Are you flagging questions, by the way? Do you ever flag tough questions?
Yeah, usually I'll read the stimulus, read the question, and then if I get through every single answer and I'm like, none of these are really working, I'll just flag it and then go back.
Good. So I might try flagging maybe 3 or 4 max.
Okay.
You might try upping that a little bit just to maintain your pace so that you can get through the end of the section.
That's a good point. So yeah, that's helpful.
So that's one thing I'd be looking at. Then I'd be thinking about, in my review process, could I be doing more to document what I'm getting wrong and why? So here, your review process looks a little minimal to me, to be honest. I think there's more room to flesh it out.
Okay.
And so one thing you could do, for example, is look at not just the wrong answer and the right answer, but also look at the stimulus. meaning the method of reasoning in the argument. Maybe that was where the misunderstanding stemmed from.
Right. Yeah.
To make sure that you thoroughly understand it.
I do that. I haven't been writing down the, which would obviously supplement and writing down the things that I'm pulling from the stimulus, because obviously, like, I can't determine what the right answer actually is unless I read the stimulus. I just need to document that better.
I'll show you an example from another student just to give you an idea of how you might go about this in your own studying. So here's a wrong answer journal from another student. And so if you look at theirs, they're obviously using a spreadsheet, not a notebook. I'm not particular about which one you use. The question is just the level of detail. Right. So here they have test number, section number, question stem type, problem type they put, which is just their way of saying a method of reasoning. The answer they chose, the right answer, whether they flagged it or not on their initial attempt. They have here why my answer was wrong, what made that wrong answer tempting, why is the right answer right, and what made the right answer unappealing. And then finally, like, miscellaneous notes. So they're getting a lot more structured about their review to make sure that they're not missing opportunities to go deeper on a particular aspect of the question.
Yeah, okay.
Collecting that data is critical for improvement, because if you don't know what you're getting wrong and why, you'll probably just end up making the same mistakes again, because the people who write the LSAT are actually incredibly lazy. They keep reusing the same methods of reasoning, the same flaws, the same tricks and traps. But when you're doing exam after exam, just looking at the answer key, saying to yourself, oh, I get it now. How could I have been so dumb? Of course it's D and not C. But then you move on to the next exam and do the exact same thing all over again. But when you have that bird's eye view of the past 5, 10, 15, 20 exams you've taken and the mistakes you were making, you'll start noticing trends. You'll notice trends in the wrong answers that you're picking. You'll notice trends in the question types you're getting wrong. You'll notice patterns in the tricks and traps that you're prone to falling for. And once you recognize those, you can then take concrete steps to avoid making those same mistakes again. And what I find too often is that when students are just using a physical notebook or an empty Google Doc, writing whatever comes to mind, their review is not structured, meaning they're typically not going deep enough in their review processes, and they're also not quite as easily able to go back to that review later because it's not structured. It's a big mess, a big blob of text with no structure or discrete sections that would allow them to more easily skim it and find key information when they need it. But when you have a structured document, or a spreadsheet even better, where you have separate columns for different types of information, this both forces you to go deeper in your review for every question that you get wrong or have difficulty with, and it also allows you to more easily return to it later. Imagine if before your next practice test, you could at a quick glance look back at all the most common mistakes you were making to better prevent you from making those same mistakes again. When you have a template or a structure in place, that ensures that you're not leaving something out inadvertently. With a blank sheet, you can just kind of do whatever you want, but that might prevent you from going as deep as you could.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so that's one thing I would try playing with, adopting a template like that, just to go a little bit deeper. And then also, of course, as a result of that, you're able to note commonalities in certain question types, for example.
Is that spreadsheet, is it available as a template?
We have similar ones inside the program. I'll have the team send you a link to an example or two so that you can download and work off of that. Now, you were also asking about how to use your coaching sessions, right? So you were thinking about, like, should I save them for later or use them now? I mean, you have a lot of sessions available. You could do a cadence of every single week. And I'd probably, given where you're at relative to your goal, we're looking to go from the 147 to the 175, I would recommend using more sessions now, actually, just to make sure that you're on the right path. Because if you wait till mid-April, then you're gonna lose a potential month of the more effective studying that you could have been doing. I'm not saying you got to do 2 hours a week with him, but even just an hour a week for consistency could make sure that you're staying on track and studying the right way. Just to have those regular check-ins, I think. And then also, Jet could review with you your spreadsheet or whatever document you end up adopting to make sure that what you're saying is both accurate and the format is thorough. Having that expert guidance earlier in the process from someone who's already been in your shoes can make your path forward that much smoother, helping you study more effectively. And so in Jake's case, rather than waiting 1 month more out of the only 3 months he has till his June LSAT, I would recommend instead he use that coaching time now, maybe even front load it now, so that he's on the ramp to success that much sooner. He's looking to improve 25, 30 points in just 3 months while he's working, while he's in school. He's still willing to put in the time, but I want to make sure that he's studying the right way, studying efficiently and effectively, maintaining that steady forward progress. The other thing he should consider is that the quick wins he'll get in the short term will keep his morale up, keep him motivated, and keep him moving forward. And sometimes that additional accountability and support earlier in the process can make all the difference. Well, for some question types than others. I find it's really helpful for flaw questions, of course, where ideally you should be able to articulate the flaw in your own words. But for some question types, it's not all that useful because there could be several different ways to strengthen or weaken an argument or to resolve a seeming paradox, for example. And so, of course, it's good to try to rephrase when you can, but you're not going to be able to predict the correct specific answer in every single case, and that's okay. Sometimes I find it's more useful, big picture, to just recognize the method of reasoning in the stimulus to understand the general shape of the argument. I reference to all the methods of reasoning I've seen in the past during my previous LSAT prep. Then going into a new question, even if the surface level topic seems different, of course, the underlying structure or principle of the argument remains the same, and that can help me get through it that much faster.
I think the only thing that I would, when you're reading the stimulus, especially in LR, you're kind of, once you're finishing with it, you're determining it for a fact, and then if it's an argument, you're determining if it's a valid or an invalid argument. I'm having some trouble arriving to predictions, being skeptical of arguments, finding a bridge from that, the pre-phrasing or whatever you want to. I find that when I am predicting, I'm pretty accurate. If there's any tips or strategies you would have on
Yeah, I do. So I mean, with arguments, with fact sets, of course, there's not really a gap that we're looking to evaluate, but for arguments there is. And so yeah. I wouldn't say that I have a pre-phrase or prediction specifically in mind every single time. Maybe half the time I do, half the time I don't. Some question types lend themselves to it more than others. Like obviously for flaw questions, there's a clear egregious error of some kind that we're looking to articulate or preface for ourselves. With strength and weaken, it's more like there's potential categories of issues. The question I would always come down to is, how is it possible for the evidence which is given to be true, yet for the conclusion to be false? So how can we problematize the conclusion? Say the conclusion doesn't have to necessarily follow. If it didn't follow, why would that be? So just an open-ended curiosity for whatever might come in out of left field that could pose an issue, validity of the argument. A lot of the pattern recognition, as you get more exposure to different LSAT questions, will help you more readily predict when you read something new. But that being said, you don't always have to predict as long as you can recognize it when it comes up in the questions and the answer choices. That's oftentimes enough. Usually our ability to predict is based on familiarity both with the method of reasoning, if we've seen it several times before, as well as just the topic shouldn't matter, of course, but sometimes it does because the more real world exposure to the topic, the more readily we're going to be able to come up with the outside the box ways that one could, again, strengthen or weaken an argument, for example. So the short answer is it'll come with practice as you do more. In one of my LSAT coaching programs, you can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And now back to the show.
Yeah.
Cool. So before we sign off, Jake, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Because I mean, at the end of the day, if you can identify patterns with types of problems that you're getting wrong, that's going to be a way to the scoring chain, because you're going to be addressing specific weaknesses, obviously.
Cool. Fantastic. Well, keep at it. Get on that progress tracking, get on the review method lined here just to show you how you could go a lot deeper on it. I think that a lot of your gain is going to come from adopting the tracking of the data in terms of what you're getting wrong and why, and then the question types. So the review process, the question types, that'll give you the direction in terms of where to take it. And then the regular weekly meetings, ideally with your coach, will help for the consistency and accountability to make sure that you're on the right track.
Cool.
Awesome, Jake. Well, it was a pleasure. Keep in touch. If you need anything going forward, just reach out. I'm happy to help.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve.